Listen, I don't care if you've lived in your state your entire life. I don't care if your family has been there for generations. I don't care about your emotional attachment to your property or your nostalgia for your hometown. What I care about is your financial future. And right now, if you own real estate, businesses, or significant assets in certain states across America, you're sitting on a ticking time bomb. You need to hear this brutal truth before it's too late. Here's what nobody in government wants to admit. Here's what your real estate agent won't tell you because they're trying to collect their commission. Here's what local politicians are actively hiding from you because they need your tax dollars. 8 states in America are in a death spiral, not struggling, not facing challenges, in a full-blown, irreversible death spiral. And if you don't get your assets out now, you're going to watch your wealth evaporate over the next 5 to 10 years. I've been analyzing state economies for over 40 years. I've invested in real estate across this country. I've built businesses in multiple states. I've watched some states thrive while others collapsed. And I'm telling you right now, with absolute certainty, that there are 8 states where the combination of taxes, regulations, crime, infrastructure decay, and mass exodus has created a situation so catastrophic that your property values, your business valuations, and your quality of life are all heading in one direction, down, dramatically down. Poor people ignore warning signs until it's too late. They convince themselves things will get better. They believe politicians who promise reform while simultaneously raising taxes and driving out businesses. They hold on to depreciating assets out of stubbornness or denial. Rich people see the data, accept reality, and move their capital before the collapse accelerates. That's the difference. That's why some people build generational wealth while others watch it disappear. But first, I need you to do something. If you're serious about protecting your assets, if you're tired of watching your tax burden increase while services deteriorate, if you want to preserve your wealth instead of letting incompetent politicians destroy it, then hit that subscribe button right now. Join this community. We're building something here, a group of people who understand that your wealth is mobile and your loyalty should be to your family's financial future, not to politicians who don't care about you. Subscribe now, because what I'm sharing today could save you hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. The 8 states I'm about to name share 5 critical characteristics: crushing tax burdens that are increasing, not decreasing; regulatory environments that punish businesses and entrepreneurs; crime rates that are exploding while politicians defund police or refuse to prosecute criminals; infrastructure that's crumbling with no realistic plan to fix it; and most importantly, net population outflows, meaning more people are leaving than arriving. When you combine all 5 factors, you get a death spiral that feeds on itself and accelerates over time. Let me start with the first state you need to sell everything in immediately: California. I know that's not shocking to most of you, but you need to understand just how bad this has gotten. California has the highest state income tax in America at 13.3%. If you're a high earner, you're giving over half your income to federal and state governments combined. That's financial suicide. But it's not just income tax. Property taxes continue rising despite Proposition 13 because of special assessments and local bonds. Sales tax in many cities exceeds 10%. Gas taxes are the highest in the nation. And what are you getting for all those taxes? Rolling blackouts because the state can't keep the power on. Streets filled with homeless encampments because the state refuses to enforce laws. Crime rates exploding in major cities because district attorneys won't prosecute criminals. Schools that are failing despite spending over $15,000 per student annually. Water shortages and rationing despite being on the ocean. Infrastructure that's literally crumbling with bridges rated structurally deficient. The exodus from California is absolutely catastrophic. Over 360,000 people left California in just 1 year recently. That's not 3,000, that's 360,000. And who's leaving? High earners, business owners, productive citizens who are tired of being tax slaves to a government that provides terrible services. Who's staying? people dependent on government programs and people who can't afford to leave. That's a demographic disaster that guarantees the death spiral accelerates. I moved my personal residence out of California years ago, and it was one of the best financial decisions I ever made. I still do business there because you have to. It's a massive economy, but I don't live there. I don't pay their confiscatory taxes, and I'm watching property values in many areas stagnate or decline, while property values in Florida, Texas, and Tennessee are soaring. Poor people stay in California and complain. Rich people leave California and thrive. The second state you need to sell everything in is New York. And I'm not just talking about New York City, although that's a catastrophe in its own right. The entire state is in trouble. New York has the second highest state income tax in America. Property taxes are crushing, especially on Long Island and in Westchester County, where people pay $20, $30, even $40,000 annually in property taxes on middle-class homes. The state pension system is underfunded by hundreds of billions of dollars, which means taxes are going up, not down. Crime in New York City has exploded. Violent crime, property crime, subway crime, retail theft. Businesses are fleeing. Walgreens closed dozens of stores. CVS closed multiple locations. Whole Foods closed their flagship store in Manhattan. These aren't struggling businesses. These are major corporations with deep pockets who did the math and realized they can't operate profitably when theft is rampant and prosecutors won't charge criminals. The population exodus from New York is just as bad as California. People are leaving in massive numbers. The state lost over 300,000 residents recently. Congressional seats are being lost because the population is shrinking. And again, it's the productive, high-earning citizens who are leaving. The tax base is evaporating while the costs of government continue rising. That's unsustainable mathematics. If you own commercial real estate in New York City, you're sitting on a disaster. Office buildings are empty because remote work proved you don't need expensive Manhattan office space. Vacancy rates in some Class A buildings exceed 30%. Property values have fallen 20, 30, even 40% in some cases. And they're not coming back because companies have figured out they can operate from Texas or Florida and save millions in rent and taxes. The third state is Illinois. And this might be the worst of all 8 because the pension crisis is so severe that there's literally no way out. Illinois has the worst credit rating of any state in America. The state pension system is underfunded by over $140 billion. Let me repeat that. $140 billion in unfunded pension liabilities. There is no scenario where that gets fixed without massive tax increases or a complete default on promises made to retirees. Chicago is a war zone. Violent crime rates are among the highest in the nation. Carjackings have become so common they're barely newsworthy. Retail businesses are closing because organized theft rings, strip stores clean, and prosecutors refuse to charge criminals. The Magnificent Mile, once a world-class shopping destination, now has empty storefronts and minimal foot traffic. That's not a temporary problem. That's a death spiral. Property taxes in Illinois are absolutely crushing. The median property tax bill in some Chicago suburbs exceeds $10,000 annually. Some homeowners pay $15,000 or $20,000, and those taxes are going up because the state and municipalities are desperate for revenue to cover pension obligations. If you own property in Illinois, you're funding pensions for retired government workers while your property value stagnates or declines. Over 100,000 people left Illinois recently in a single year. The state has lost population for 9 consecutive years. Think about that. 9 straight years of more people leaving than arriving. Businesses are relocating to Indiana, Wisconsin, Texas, Florida. Boeing moved their headquarters out of Chicago. Caterpillar left. Citadel, one of the largest hedge funds in the world, moved to Miami. When billionaires and Fortune 500 companies are fleeing, that should tell you everything. If this makes sense to you, if you're starting to understand that loyalty to a failing state is financial suicide, then leave a comment telling me which state you're in and whether you're planning to move. Be honest with yourself. Your state isn't going to magically fix itself. Politicians who created these problems aren't suddenly going to become competent and responsible. The trajectory is set. The 4th state is New Jersey. New Jersey has the highest property taxes in America. The average property tax bill exceeds $9,000 annually. Some areas are far higher. People pay $15,000, $20,000, even $30,000 in property taxes on homes that aren't mansions. And what are you getting for those taxes? terrible roads, failing schools in many districts, high crime in multiple cities, a completely broken pension system that's underfunded by over $100 billion. The state income tax in New Jersey tops out at 10.75%. Combined with federal taxes, high earners are giving up over 50% of their income. The sales tax is 6.625%. There are dozens of other fees, assessments, and taxes that add up to one of the highest total tax burdens in America. And none of it is getting better. The state is in a fiscal crisis with no solution in sight. People are fleeing New Jersey in massive numbers. Over 70,000 people left recently in just 1 year, and they're not moving to Pennsylvania or New York. They're moving to Florida, Texas, North Carolina, Tennessee, states with no income tax or significantly lower taxes, states where their money goes further and their quality of life improves. Poor people stay in New Jersey and complain about taxes. Rich people move to Florida and buy waterfront property. The fifth state is Connecticut. Connecticut should be thriving. It's close to New York City. It has beautiful coastline. It has a highly educated population, but it's not thriving. It's dying. The state has the second highest property taxes in America after New Jersey. The state income tax is among the highest in the nation. The pension system is catastrophically underfunded. Several cities, including Hartford, the capital, are essentially bankrupt. General Electric left Connecticut, Alexion Pharmaceuticals left, Aetna left. Major corporations that employed thousands of high-paying workers decided Connecticut's tax and regulatory environment was too hostile. They moved to states that wanted their business instead of punishing success. And when those companies left, they took jobs, tax revenue, and economic activity with them. The population of Connecticut is shrinking. Young people graduate college and immediately leave for better opportunities in other states. Retirees flee to avoid having their pensions and Social Security taxed at high rates. Business owners relocate to escape the regulatory burden and taxes. What's left is an aging population, declining tax base, and increasing government costs. That's a death spiral. The sixth state is Massachusetts. Now, Massachusetts has some strengths. Boston is a major city with great universities and a strong biotech sector. But the state has massive problems that are getting worse. The cost of living is crushing. Housing prices are insane relative to incomes. Property taxes are high and rising. The state income tax is 5% flat, which doesn't sound terrible until you realize there are 9 states with zero income tax. Traffic in Boston is among the worst in America. The public transportation system, the MBTA, is literally falling apart with trains catching fire and tracks that are unsafe. The state keeps raising taxes and fees to fund government operations while services deteriorate. The combination of high costs, high taxes, bad traffic, and declining quality of life is driving people out. Thousands of residents are leaving Massachusetts annually for New Hampshire, Florida, and other lower tax states. Business owners are relocating to avoid the regulatory burden and high costs. Young professionals are moving to Austin, Nashville, and Charlotte, where their salaries go further and quality of life is better. Massachusetts is slowly bleeding talent and capital. The seventh state is Oregon. Portland has become a national embarrassment. The city is overrun with homeless encampments, drug addicts openly using in the streets, and rampant crime. Businesses are closing or relocating. Residents are fleeing to suburbs or leaving the state entirely. The downtown is a ghost town with empty storefronts and minimal foot traffic. This was one of America's most beautiful cities. Now it's a cautionary tale of what happens when you elect incompetent politicians who prioritize ideology over reality. The state income tax in Oregon tops out at 9.9%, and there's no sales tax, so they make up for it with high property taxes and income taxes. The regulatory environment is hostile to business. Entrepreneurs and business owners are moving to Washington state, which has no income tax, or to Idaho and Texas. The people leaving are productive citizens. The people staying are increasingly dependent on government programs. Oregon's population growth has slowed to nearly zero. In some years, the state has actually lost population. That's catastrophic for an economy that needs growth to fund government services and infrastructure. When your productive citizens are leaving and your tax base is shrinking, you're in a death spiral. The eighth state is Minnesota. Minnesota has a top income tax rate of 9.85%. Property taxes are high. The regulatory burden is significant. And Minneapolis, the state's largest city, has experienced massive problems with crime, riots, and businesses fleeing. The George Floyd riots destroyed entire neighborhoods that still haven't recovered. Businesses closed and never reopened. Property values collapsed in affected areas. The winters in Minnesota are brutal, which is fine if the quality of life and economic opportunity justify enduring negative 20-degree weather. But when you can move to Texas or Florida, have better weather, pay zero state income tax, and have better economic opportunities, why would you stay? Thousands of Minnesotans are asking themselves that question and answering by moving. Here's what all 8 of these states have in common. They're controlled by politicians who believe the solution to every problem is higher taxes and more government. They punish success and subsidize failure. They make it harder to do business while making it easier to depend on government. They defund police or refuse to prosecute criminals while wondering why crime explodes. They spend money recklessly while infrastructure crumbles. And when productive citizens leave, they double down on the same failed policies instead of changing course. Poor people think they're trapped in these states. They think they can't leave because of family, jobs, or fear of change. Rich people understand that your wealth is mobile and your family's financial future is more important than staying in a failing state. They sell their property, move their businesses, and relocate to states that respect taxpayers and provide good governance. Now here's what you need to do immediately. First, if you live in one of these 8 states, calculate your total tax burden. Add up your federal income tax, state income tax, property tax, sales tax, and every other fee and assessment you pay. Compare that to what you'd pay in a state with no income tax like Florida, Texas, Tennessee, or Nevada. The difference will shock you. Over a decade or two, you could save hundreds of thousands or even millions of dollars. Second, if you own real estate in one of these states, get it appraised and listed now. Don't wait for the market to get worse. Don't hope things will improve. They won't. The trends are clear and accelerating. Sell while you can still get reasonable prices. Take your equity and reinvest it in appreciating markets like Florida, Texas, Tennessee, North Carolina, or Arizona. Your future self will thank you. Third, if you own a business in one of these states, explore relocation options. Talk to economic development officials in business-friendly states. You'll be shocked at the incentives they offer to attract companies. Texas, Florida, Tennessee, and other states are actively recruiting businesses with tax breaks, grants, and streamlined permitting. They want your business and they'll prove it. Meanwhile, the state you're in is probably raising your taxes and adding regulations. Fourth, if you're employed and can work remotely, start planning your exit. You don't need permission from a failing state government to improve your life. Get remote work approved. Pick a state with lower taxes and better quality of life, and move. Your employer doesn't care where you live as long as you do your job. Take advantage of that flexibility. And finally, don't let emotions override financial logic. I understand you might love your state. I understand you have history there. I understand change is scary. But loving a state doesn't make it financially viable to stay there. Having history there doesn't stop politicians from raising your taxes. Fear of change doesn't prevent your property values from declining. Rich people make decisions based on data and logic. Poor people make decisions based on emotion and nostalgia. Choose wisely. Smash that like button right now if this is resonating with you. Share this with friends and family who are sitting on depreciating assets in failing states. They need to hear this truth even if it makes them uncomfortable. Hit that like button, share this video, and become part of a community that understands your loyalty belongs to your family's financial future, not to incompetent politicians who don't care about you. But don't stop there. Become a member of this channel. When you become a member, you're investing in financial education that could save you hundreds of thousands of dollars in taxes and bad investment decisions. You're joining a community of people who are serious about building and protecting wealth by making smart decisions based on data, not emotion. Subscribe, become a member, and let's build wealth in states that respect taxpayers instead of watching it evaporate in states that punish success. This is how you win. This is the only way. Let's get to work.